Hello and welcome to Good Evening Britain, a Force for Good's weekly show coming to you live from our studios here in the heart of the great British city of Glasgow, with me, your host, Alistair McConnachie, broadcasting throughout the United Kingdom and across the world. We're bringing you quality pro-UK comment and analysis every Wednesday from 7 until 8 p.m, broadcasting on YouTube, on Facebook, and on our Twitter platforms. Folks, please tell us where you're coming from, please tell us where you're watching from, and please do send in your comments on this, a massively important week in British history. And what a week and what a spectacle was the sad occasion of the Queen's funeral. But goodness me, what a way to go out. If there's one thing Britain can still do well, it is the pomp and pageantry of state occasions. And goodness me, we pulled it off so well on Monday the 19th of September 2022, a day that will go down in history, the day that Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II was committed. Tell us what you think about that. What were your thoughts on the day? Lots of emotions, of course, and lots of points of view on that day. Many of them, of course, just remarking at what an amazing spectacle and how well everybody performed their role to a T, from the soldiers, from the members of state, from the royal family, to the musicians, to everybody lining the route, and even to the British Broadcasting Corporation, which surpassed themselves that particular day with extremely good footage, which was so well done, so well done. So please tell us what you thought on that. We'll be interested to hear. We've got a lot to say about it as well. And we're also going to be looking forward to the future to see what it can mean if we move forward with the kind of attitude that we had, with the skill and professionalism that we still have here in Great Britain. If we can somehow harness all of that and put that into our collective future, what a future we could in fact have. Eric says, Scotland was magnificent during the Queen's funeral, weren't we just? We watched you down here with pride and astonishment. All we ever hear is the horrible nationalist voice. Well, do you know what? In a minute or so, we're just going to play a wee clip from Neil Oliver, who makes that point and helps to develop it as well. Richard said, good evening, Alistair. Hope things are very well with you, my friend. And thank you, Richard. Also, hope you had a good weekend. Stuart says, good evening, everyone. And Sandra, hello to all supporters of our union. Well, that's everybody in here tonight, I'm glad to say. And good to see Pauline as well. The Nats says, have been struck dumb by the massive support for the monarchy. Exactly. They're struck dumb by it because they haven't had... We, the pro-monarchists, have not had the microphone, which is a phrase that I learned from Neil Oliver. We'll just play him right now. In fact, he was interviewed by Good GB News on Monday evening, and he had these comments to make. Let's play the video.
There's no doubting that what we've seen has been a potent demonstration of something deep. And I think what it has underlined, the way in which events played out in Scotland and then the way in which events have played out this week, is that there is a British family, there is a British community, and there is a sense of togetherness. And for a while there, in fact for years, there have been divisive and separatist voices that have hogged the microphone and had the better part of the spotlight. I think what we've been seeing quietly and in a very dignified and respectful demonstration is that other part, that lesser seen, lesser heard, but still dominant part of the British family, and it transcends the individuals. It transcends even the monarchy. The monarchy represents us. The Queen or the monarch is the figurehead, but the sovereignty of the monarchy represents the sovereignty of the people. It's not Parliament, it's not any institution that is sovereign, it's the people. And this was an opportunity to see the people in their millions responding without instruction, without mandate, without being told what to do, just a natural, reflexive, human response. That's what we have seen. And it showed the Britishness, it showed the family of Britain. And I think that matters. It's impossible to know what that will mean in a week's time or in a month's time. But what you saw in a snapshot there were people just naturally and instinctively coming together to share an experience. And I think symbols and moments like that matter.
Incredibly well said there from Neil Oliver. And I liked some of the points that he made there, especially the idea that we have not had the microphone, that, as he put it, for years, divisive voices have hogged the microphone. And that's so true here in Scotland. I also like the point that he made about the Queen or the monarch representing the sovereignty of the people. That's also a good phrase, which deliberately gets confused by the anti-monarchists. Today, the MPs were actually being sworn in again. They had to pledge allegiance to the King, I'm glad to say. And there were two members of Alex Salmond's party, which is called ALBA, who said that they're not going to pledge allegiance. And they didn't, unfortunately. Now, that would normally mean that they were not allowed to take up their seats and that they were not allowed to debate in the House of Commons, and that they would not even get their salary. However, I looked into this, and apparently, and this is a new convention that appears to have been established, that only applies after a general election. And so long as they take their oath immediately after a general election, then they don't have to take another oath during the next during the lifetime of that parliament. So apparently this only refers to taking the oath at the start of a new parliament. And so they've got away with it. These two guys have got away with it. They'll be able to continue to sit, take their money and talk rubbish and generally be a negative quantity upon the great British people. So that's an unfortunate thing that they got away with that. That's kind of slightly irritating, but they would know that, of course. There's no way they wouldn't have taken their oath if they weren't going to get their salary. That's for sure. Anyway, they were allowed to posture like that, but people will want to know, well, how come they've been allowed to sit? Because apparently they only have to take the oath after a new parliament. But what a complete pair of plonkers, really, that they are, and it's to be nice to them. And, you know, in our magazine, Happy and Glorious, which we released to celebrate the Queen's Platinum Jubilee edition, we dedicated an entire page looking at this concept of sovereignty and how it relates to the Queen. And we pointed out the three types of sovereignty: the democratic sovereignty of the people, the legal sovereignty of the Parliament, and the national sovereignty of the nation, if we're defining sovereignty as authority. And we pointed out that the Queen is at various times a physical embodiment, that is, a living symbol of national, legal and democratic sovereignty, either separately or combined. And vesting a form of sovereignty in the Queen in this way does not deprive the people or the Parliament of it. It simply provides a focused and tangible symbol of sovereignty. And we've been explaining this to these SNP and Republican types for years now. For years. I remember writing letters about this to the Herald and the Scotsman 15, 20 years ago on this matter. But of course they don't want to accept that. They're set in their ways, obviously. And I say here, some politicians may try to claim that their allegiance is to the people or the nation rather than to the Queen or Crown. However, to pledge allegiance to the Queen is to pledge allegiance to the national icon and thereby to the people and nation which she represents. It is simply to pledge allegiance to the visible living symbol of the sovereignty of the people. Because in what other living symbol, or indeed in what other thing, can the sovereignty of a mass of people be properly represented? It can only be represented in one person, in that sense, a living symbol of the sovereignty of the people. That's what the Queen is. When you pledge allegiance to the Queen, you're pledging allegiance to the living sovereignty, the living symbol of the people. And you're not depriving the people of it or anything like that. And this magazine, by the way, we had 500 copies run off. There are 9 left. And so when they go, they are all gone, other than we'll have a few remaining that can only be purchased as part of a complete back issue set. So there's only 9 of these left. So if you want your copy and you don't have it, then please do get in now for that. And we're only selling them at 1 at a time now. So please don't try to buy all 9 or something like that. They're only selling at 1 at a time now. For 9 lucky people. Sandra says that she was speaking to a naval architect today from down south originally. He's working at BAE Systems on the Type 26 frigates. He was saying these people shouting for independence have no idea of the disaster it would be. All the Navy shipbuilding would be lost. We know that the nutcases refuse to believe it. The Australians and Canadians are buying the design from BAE too. The whole project will keep the yard going until 2035 or beyond. Absolutely. Good point, Sandra. Thanks for making that one. Derek says, God save the new king. Isn't he just appearing to fit into the role quite well now? I think he's taken on a new mantle, and he looks quite kingly, I have to say. Ian says, the silent majority showed up for Her Majesty. Indy is dead. Yes, well, talking about the idea that Neil Oliver was talking about, which was the idea of the British family. Okay, that's a great concept, the idea of the British family as a human way to represent, to symbolise the life of the nation itself. There's been 1 or 2 people emphasising that point in articles. We've been looking at a lot of articles that have come out in the last 12 days, and we've been noting some of the best ones. And I just want to make 1 or 2, bring 1 or 2 of them to your attention. There was a good article that appeared in the Daily Mail back on Wednesday, September the 14th by Eddie Barnes. He says, the BBC got it so right on the pageantry, but so very wrong on the politics. And in it he points out the momentous events of the past week and the passing of the Queen served to further underline the point that the tightly bound nationalist depiction of Scotland's past, present and future just doesn't connect with our reality. Did the Queen want to make this point? I can't be alone in wondering whether her death in Scotland was somehow almost fated. For it feels to me that in dying here in Scotland at her beloved Balmoral, the greatest communicator of our times, the woman who mastered the art of telling nothing but saying everything, wanted still in death to teach us a fuller and richer story about our land. I like that expression. Wanted still in death to teach us a fuller and richer story about our land. To England, she has reminded that nation that the rest of us exist. Laid in a coffin wrapped in the royal standard of Scotland and the crown of James V placed upon it, the Queen reminded people that they live in a united kingdom. The King's visit to Northern Ireland and Wales this week also underlines the point. To Scotland, she has reminded us that our politics only explains a fraction of our traditions, our inheritance and our culture. That's so true. When you listen to Nicola Sturgeon, when you listen to those SNP people going on with all the kind of modern and woke nonsense, you get a sense, don't you, that there's no connection there to the rich past of Scotland that we share with everybody throughout the United Kingdom. He continues here, 8 years ago, ahead of the referendum on Scottish independence, the Queen famously told bystanders outside Crathy Kirk that she hoped Scots would think carefully about the future. Over the past few days, even in death, she has led the country to think hard again. We are being shown that baked into Britishness is a wondrous diversity of institutions, memories, cultures and histories. It is something we should all treasure. The late Queen and the new King, who have travelled further and deeper into this land than most of us, have done more than anyone to tell this deeper, more complex story of our land. This deeper, more complex story of our land. Absolutely, and that speaks to the heart, not just the head. Of course, the head is extremely important, but it's the heart, it's the complex story that can be told. The traditions, the institutions, the culture, all of these things coming together, binding together in harmony, sometimes in conflict, but nevertheless telling a wider story that we can all get behind here in our United Kingdom. And that's what we try to do here at Force for Good as well, is tell that complex story and simplify it in a way that appeals across the board. What does this button do? Says, I bet this channel is shadow banned or cramped by YouTube. It should have more viewers. We certainly should, shouldn't we? After 10 years, we should have more than 1,400 subscribers on YouTube. Anyway, we keep going, especially considering we're putting out 4 or 5 videos a week. Anyway, we're building across all the platforms that we can build across, and that will allow us to reach people with our resources as well. And our TikTok channel is going extremely well. We've got a video of Nicola Sturgeon, which we took back on the 24th of August. We'll just play that for you in a few seconds. That hit 150,000 views on TikTok. And so TikTok is a great platform for us to develop, and we do need help to keep that going. So if you would like to make a donation specifically to keep our TikTok going, please do go to aforceforgood.uk and do what you can there for us. But let's have a look at the classic Sturgeon video, which got 100.
You're poisoned, Miss Sturgeon. You poisoned our country. You poisoned our country.
When will you resign, Miss Sturgeon?
We want you out of power. Out of power. Out of power. Resign. Now. You're poisoned.
Oh, gosh. Resign now. Unfortunately, I doubt that she will be resigning now. But we have to make sure that we promote our message of solidarity and unity. And I think whether she liked it or not, I think Nicola Sturgeon has come to see some of the benefits of it as well. And whether she likes it or not, she is part of the British system, and she should, as a consequence, see its benefits. Goodness me, think of these two Alba MPs who won't take the oath, but they'll take an £84,000 salary. You know, think about that. Oof, how cheeky that is for them to do that. Oh, man, that gets my goat. Richard says, most of the Scotnats, including the SNP, don't understand what independence stands for. Independence means to rule oneself. Joining the EU doesn't give you that, as you have to obey the rest of the EU's laws and the rules, and the EU won't bail you out. Exactly. The people who want to leave the UK but join the EU, that's just anti-Englishness. That's all that is. I have to say it, and I'm saying it quite quietly actually, but that's what that is. Anything but England. They join with China if that was the alternative. Half of these people. It's a fact. Somebody said to me this week, there's always been a soft anti-Englishness among some people in Scotland, and if you have a political party such as the SNP, all that's going to do is amplify their attitude. Thankfully they are, though, in a minority. I must say, they are in a minority, we know that. Frankie loves that video. Amazing video, classic. Yeah, and congrats to the people who were shouting in that video, and also especially to the person who took that video, who was just happened to be in the right place, that person had chosen their place very carefully, it should be said, and bang, they were definitely in the right place when it came to videoing Miss Sturgeon coming out of that building. Well done. Stuart says, well, it's not going to be Sturgeon's problem because she'll be in Portugal with a big stash of cash. Yeah. Well, do you know what? It's just coming to the bottom of the hour, so it's time for On This Day in British History. Now, after I've mentioned On This Day, we will ask you a question, and this is the prize. A proud to be British fridge magnet, which is definitely the words for this week, right? Isn't it? Proud to be British. That's definitely the slogan for this week. So, on this day in British history, 21st of September 1914, a famous poem was first published in the Times, and it has been quoted every year and maybe every single day ever since. And it was written by a man called Laurence Binyon, Binyon, while he was sitting at Pentire Point, which is in Cornwall. And what was the poem? The poem was, "They shall grow not old, as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun and in the morning, we will remember them." That was a poem written by Laurence Binyon, published on this day, 21st of September, in the Times. And it has become a classic poem of remembrance. That was simply one of the verses. There were 7 verses of it. And we have a picture of where he actually composed the verse, sitting there overlooking the shoreline there in Cornwall. That plaque says, "For the Fallen." That's the name of the poem, "For the Fallen," composed on these cliffs in 1914. And Laurence Binyon was too old to join the British Expeditionary Force as it was then, but he did, in 1916, he went to work for the Red Cross as a medical orderly. He was born in Lancaster, and for the rest of his life he had a career at the British Museum in the Department of Printed Books, and he died in 1943. So he left us, what a gift Laurence Binyon left us, and in a few words he summarised a sentiment so perfectly that it has become immortal, an immortal sentiment. Okay, now what else on this day? A famous Scotsman and a famous unionist passed away. It was the day that Sir Walter Scott died, on the 21st of September in 1832, the literary giant and novelist. And he is credited with essentially inventing the historical novel, at least in the popular sense, where his characters were real people from history set in his historical and fictionalized settings, which went extremely well. And from a unionist perspective, it could be said that his novels introduced an often romanticised version of Scotland to readers throughout the rest of the United Kingdom. So he introduced Scotland, essentially, albeit a somewhat romanticised version, to the rest of the people of the United Kingdom, and thereby popularised Scotland in the British public consciousness. And he's notable for being the PR guru, as we would say today, who masterminded the visit of King George IV to Edinburgh back when that was at the start of the 19th century. And Waverley Station is named after his novel Waverley. Indeed, he wrote a series of novels that were simply called the Waverley Novels, and he never added his name to them, so nobody knew actually who wrote them. They were simply credited as by the author of Waverley. And it was only in 1827 that he actually came forward and said, "Yeah, I wrote those." And we've a really nice railway poster that I'm not sure when that dates from there, but that's an advert for North British Railways, encouraging you to travel up to Edinburgh and thereby see the various home and haunts of Sir Walter Scott. And up there, from clockwise from the top, is Abbotsford, which was his house, which is still open to the public. Moving over, that's Dryborough Abbey, where he and his wife, Lady Scott, are buried. And then there's the Gothic monument there, the Scott Monument on Princes Street. And then across from that is Melrose Abbey. Direct and picturesque route between England and Scotland, the Midland and Waverley route, which I can't imagine is a whole lot different from what you do, the route that there's there today. And there's another North British poster which we'll just put up now that we're talking about railways, and I do like that name, North British, the North British Railway. There used to be a North British hotel that sat at the bottom of Princes Street, but when Margaret Thatcher privatised the railways, it got sold off, and it's now called the Balmoral. It's now called the Balmoral. But look, that would be the North British railway system before Beeching, before the 60s. And that's quite a network of rail lines there, especially in the border area. All of those have gone now. And you just wonder how Scotland, and especially the borders, might have developed if those lines, those arteries, had still been in operation. Good. Okay, well, I'll ask a wee question about that in a minute, but something that I just want to bring to your attention is a couple of really good articles by a chap called Frank Furedi, or Furedi, who is a philosopher and a non-woke philosopher, as it were. And he published a couple of articles last week which are absolutely excellent, and in a minute we'll find the link to one of them up in the comments. But one was Why They Hate the Queen, and he was referring here to the New York Times and some of the American fake news, as some people have called them, channels, and why they have got this inherent anti-Britishness among them. And he was pointing out here that they like to criticise nostalgia. Apparently nostalgia is a bad thing for them, because for them, for critics of Britishness, nostalgia does not simply refer to sentimental imagining, but to any form of historical memory that ascribes positive qualities to aspects of the past. That's what they don't like. They don't like to have the past described in any kind of positive way. From their standpoint, such sentiments are not allowed. Indeed, these critics regard the refusal to denounce Britain's past as a cultural crime. The denunciation of nostalgia is motivated by the goal of contaminating the past and estranging people from their historical legacy. Because, to add to that, when you estrange people from their historical legacy, then people don't know where they're going to go, because they don't know where they are, because they don't know where they've been. The premise of the anti-populist critique of nostalgia is that rather than providing a positive guide to life, the customs and traditions of the past represent negative and unacceptable conventions and practices. When they attack the legacy of Britain's history, they are also making a statement about the historical legacy of Western culture. In a roundabout way, their anti-Britishness is not simply directed at Britain, but also at their society. Their hatred towards Britishness simply expresses their animosity towards their own society. They hate the Queen because she symbolises a way of life they wish to destroy at home and abroad. That's a very good article there from Frank Furedi, Why They Hate the Queen, which was published at his Substack. And then he went on and developed that concept on Spiked Online with the Queen's service to history, and you'll find that in our comment thread as well, and also on our Twitter, where he says the possession of a sense of the past was and still ought to be an actual faculty of the mind. It is the process by which one becomes conscious of history and one's place in it, and develops a sense of historical continuity. And he points out the extent to which the Queen has been pointing out the sense of historical continuity to an nth degree, because her values and her behaviour reminded British society of a very different world to the one being promoted by the media. She made people feel good about who they were and instilled pride about the British way of life. This was a remarkable achievement in a world in which Britishness has become a constant target of anti-patriotic ideologues. She steadfastly affirmed it as something of which we can be proud. Almost single-handedly, this historic Queen ensured that the thread that connects Britain to its past remains intact. The thread that connects Britain to its past remains intact. Hallelujah. And thank goodness and thank God for Frank Furedi. What a thinker and what a writer he is. And that's the Queen's Service to History, which will be one of the best articles that we've read here in the office in the last 12 days. And believe us, we've read a lot of them. Frankie says, keep up the amazing work, Alistair. Well, thank you, Frankie. With your help, we certainly intend to. Believe us when we say we will stay the course for the union we so love. As we finish all our addresses to the Scottish nationalist marchers. James says, our late Queen reached out throughout the country and the Commonwealth in the interests of peace and harmony. Didn't she just? Didn't she just? Nelson likes the British history. More brilliant British history brought to us by AFFG. And Super Typist, well, you may be in with a chance of winning the fridge magnet. Hope you entered the competition. Nathan says, the politics the SNP practice is the politics of grievance. But if you press them to explain exactly how Scotland is oppressed by Westminster, they can't answer you. That's for sure. What does all this mean going forward then? Going forward, we saw the Neil Oliver video earlier, and he was just highlighting the extent to which what it does show is so many people throughout the United Kingdom have not had the microphone. And Frank Furedi there points out that so many people throughout the United Kingdom liked the Queen because she was different from the world that the media was presenting to them, that she reminded them of what's great about Britain. And when I started the programme today, I also talked about how great the pageantry and pomp and ceremony and organisation was of the Queen's funeral. And if we could somehow package all of that and take that forward, what a great nation and a great world we would be able to have. So it's a positive moment when the United Kingdom projected to itself and to the world that it could get it together and it could still do great things. As somebody said to us, we didn't need the European Union to organise that event, for example. We can still do it when we have to. We have the energy, we have the determination, we have the ability, we have the people, we have the sentiment to do that. And so as far as the Union is concerned, this is one of these moments when an imaginative politician can make things happen, can take things forward. It's a good opportunity to build upon, and opportunities don't come around very often. And believe us that the enemies of this nation exploit every single opportunity they possibly can to make things worse. So this is an opportunity to try to make things better, to try to build the unity of our British Isles. And so it's a time for grasping sometimes the thistle of difficult policies and getting them through. Now is the time to bring in the policies and to build upon this opportunity. And we've said it before, if you want to strengthen the Union, there's certain key things that really need to be done in what remains of the lifetime of this Parliament. The Northern Ireland Protocol has to get ditched, and Northern Ireland has to be brought firmly within the United Kingdom. We saw King Charles and Camilla go over to Northern Ireland, for example, to demonstrate how much they intended to continue to be the King and Queen for Northern Ireland. So Northern Ireland has to get brought fully back in within the British Union again, and that means firstly ditching the Northern Ireland Protocol. The second thing that can be done is, and it's an easy win, is to stop the civil service in Scotland from doing anything to help the Scottish nationalists promote separation, to prevent the Scottish National Party being able to spend millions of pounds and getting the Scottish civil service, which is actually the British civil service, to promote separation. We can stop the civil service in Scotland from promoting separation simply through an order from the British government. That has to be done, okay, because we cannot, as unionists, we cannot compete against the British civil service here in Scotland, which is trying to destroy the United Kingdom. A crazy set of affairs. So Liz Truss and her new cabinet have to grasp that thistle, and they have to pass a law, and we've already written the law, and indeed what needs to be done in our magazine, Do More Together, when we point out what needs to be done. So that's the second thing that needs to be done. The third thing that needs to be done is we must continuously challenge the so-called devolution settlement. It's not set in stone. The new British government has to continuously put out ideas. It has to continuously dominate the narrative and put the Scottish National Party on the back foot in whatever way that it can. The so-called devolution settlement was set up wrongly in the first place. It devolved everything to the Scottish Parliament, literally everything except a few things that were written down. That's the wrong way around. The only things that should be devolved are that which are written down, and everything else should be presumed to be reserved. And the fourth thing is to constantly be looking at ways to socially and culturally strengthen the United Kingdom. And one of these ways was actually highlighted today, not today, was it yesterday? No, it was on Sunday, by the Daily Express, where they said, "Honour our Queen with E2R Day," which was a special bank holiday for the Queen. And we've long argued that we should have a British National Day in our magazine here, Do More Together. We argued that very point, that we should have a British Day bank holiday, and that it should be the Monday of Trooping the Colour. And you can get this at our shop, which is aforceforgood.uk/shop-1. And that would be a day to celebrate the United Kingdom, to remember the British Constitution, to educate about the British Constitution, to educate about British history as well, from a pro-British perspective. Now, it may be that politicians would find that too awkward to actually call it a British Day. Maybe if they wanted to call it a Queen Elizabeth Remembrance Day or whatever, then that could equally work as well as a day to remember the British monarchy, to educate about the British Constitution, to understand British history, and to remember and to value the United Kingdom. So just things like that, okay? So, but if they are going to do an Elizabeth Day or a British National Celebration Day, they have to do it now. Now is the time. Now is the opportunity. You have to grasp the opportunity now. Now is the time to do it. Don't wait for another 2 years or something like that. Do it now. It has to be done now. Another thing which we also mentioned actually in Do More Together is don't get the easy things wrong. Somebody sent us a document. The British government, the British Treasury, is giving £650 to people before the end of this year for people who need help with cost of living. It's called the Cost of Living Payments, totaling £650. It's two payments. One's going to be made in September and another will be made before the end of the year. And everybody who is eligible gets a letter to tell them about it. And it's just like a bland letter. It's just a bland letter. And so you're like, where is this money coming from? Where is this largesse coming from? 650 quid's quite good, but where's it coming from? Up in the corner here it says HM Revenue and Customs. Now I can assure you, virtually everybody in Scotland who gets that won't know that that's actually the British Treasury, because they'll just think this is some sort of maybe SNP programme or something like that. They're not going to know that this is actually coming from the British Treasury, and that it's because we're in a United Kingdom that we're getting these extra payments. Nobody's going to know that unless you brand it properly. Unless you say the United Kingdom Treasury is giving us this money, unless you turn that into like a Union Jack or something, people are not going to know that they've just been given 650 quid by the British government. They'll think it's the Scottish National Party. That's the way it is, and there's no excuse for that. Imagine if that was coming from the Scottish National Party. Firstly, the paper would be blue and white. There'd be a big saltire through it. There'd probably be a picture of Nicola Sturgeon in the corner with a wee speech bubble saying, I am giving you £650, It'd be very simple. That's what they would do. But oh no, you just get this kind of plain black and white letter. So how is that benefiting? How's that benefiting the union? It's not. It's just another missed opportunity. And we said brand the furlough scheme British in our magazine here, Do More Together, because the furlough scheme was not branded as coming from the British government. And in this article, we actually point out that research indicated that many people in Scotland believed it was a Holyrood scheme. They believed furlough was a Holyrood scheme. Ministers have been shocked by polling evidence that the UK government has had no credit for the coronavirus furlough scheme, which Scottish voters believe is a Scottish government programme. Well, if you're just going to send out blank pieces of paper that do not properly explain where the money's coming from, then of course people are not going to know. So that's another thing that has to get changed. Okay, if the British government is giving us money, it has to be branded as coming from the United Kingdom Centre, coming from the British Treasury. Can we hold out hope that Liz Truss will eventually listen to this? We're going to send Do More Together to every new cabinet member over the next 6 weeks with a wee covering letter explaining the points that I've just made and linking to an article which we're going to publish on the website. And maybe that'll help Because we do notice some of the government ministers making noises and saying things that do suggest they have been influenced to an extent by some of our rhetoric. Oh yeah, absolutely. Christopher, we need to be much less understated. The union needs to look at its branding big time. Absolutely. The union needs to look at its branding big time. Eric says, bang on for the new public holiday, especially for the young people, Generation Z. Due to recent polls, they think the monarchy is becoming less relevant. Let's hope that some of them have noticed its relevance this week, that's for sure. James says, let's hope Mrs. Truss sees your magazine and acts on it. Stronger together. Catherine says, well said. Derek likes the show. He says, great show, Alistair. Lots of information every week. Great facts about British history. Rule Britannia. Christopher says, the past few days have underlined the role of the monarch as a mediator between the people and the political classes. The monarch stands way above any here today, gone tomorrow politician, representing all of us and all our history. Absolutely, well said. Eric says, obviously not all Americans are anti-British, that's for sure, but they are actually crying out for a symbolic unifier like a monarch. Take the President of the USA. He isn't exactly bringing unity to all American people, but only supporting his followers. That's right. Politicians are politically compromised because they can really only truly represent those people who voted for them. And Paul says, a happy, unified, historically aware people cannot be radicalized by some extreme cause. That's right. If you're historically aware, you can't be radicalized. You are inoculated against being radicalized if you have an understanding of the sweep of history. Fortunately, the monarchy brings the required happiness, unity, and an awareness of history. That's right. Aren't we so lucky? Aren't we so lucky? We really are lucky to be British. And it's great to be British. Absolutely. We won the lottery of life. What's the phrase? We won in the lottery of life when we became British. Marion says that Sturgeon will be delighted to hear that many of us think that money came from her and she won't put them right. That's right, she doesn't need to do anything. She just needs to say, oh, well, there you go. The people will think it came from me, so I don't even have to mention it. I agree, Stuart, we're the best country in the world. That's right, Christopher. We won the winning ticket in the lottery of life when we discovered we were British. Talking about being British, there is a tweet here about the Wallace Tower that I want just to bring to your attention. It was back, I think it must have been the 14th of September. No, it was the 17th of September. I was just randomly browsing Twitter late at night, and I discovered that South Ayrshire Council had put out a tweet about 3 days before, and it was a picture of the Wallace Tower, which is dedicated to William Wallace in Ayr High Street, and they had beamed on it red, white, the colours red, white and blue, and they said these colours would be up until and inclusive of the day of the Queen's funeral. And I thought, crikey, look at that, that's good. And it had about 25 retweets, and it had been up for 3 days. And I thought to myself, that's absurd, that should have hundreds of retweets. So we've got 27,000 followers on our Twitter, so I retweeted it out, and it immediately took off and went viral over the next couple of days, and it's now got almost like 900 retweets, and it will have been seen by tens of thousands of people. Let's put the pic up there. There it is. South Ayrshire Council. The Wallace Tower in Ayr will remain lit up in red, white and blue. And I say there, thanks for doing this, it's lovely. And it's got, that was this afternoon, it's got 865 retweets, that's the figure in the middle, and 1,548 likes. Now, I should say these 1,548 likes are mainly from unionists, and about half the retweets are absolutely outraged Scottish nationalists who cannot believe that William Wallace is getting the red, white and blue treatment. But we unionists love that because we integrate Scottish history. We see it as a progression through history up to ultimate unity. So we don't hold any kind of we're not living back in those days, wanting to return to those days. So it makes perfect sense that one of the ancient Scottish kings should now be king of the United Kingdom. In fact, as we always say, the Queen was related directly back to Robert the Bruce, and of course King Charles is also therefore directly related right back to Robert the Bruce. And if Robert the Bruce was here today, he would certainly want to be king of the United Kingdom and its realms, territories and dependencies, no question about that. Derek says, God save the king, keep up the great work, guys. We definitely will. Nelson says it's brilliant being British. Now, it's the top of the hour, ladies and gentlemen. We will be back next Wednesday with another programme. And we're back to normal programming now. So thank you to everybody who's commented. Thank you to everybody who took part in the competition. I'm sorry that not everybody can win, but we have a competition every week. And we'll be back next week. So it just remains for me to say, God bless the United Kingdom and God save the King. See you next week.